Hey guys, tonight we begin with one of the strangest experiences you can have in ancient Rome. Because somewhere between the crowded streets, the endless noise, and the smell of smoke hanging in the air, you are about to discover a place that somehow manages to feel welcoming and intimidating at exactly the same time. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating seeing people from all around the world joining together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background sound, and let's slowly step into ancient Rome together. You are walking through the streets just before sunset, and Rome feels alive in a way that almost seems excessive. Everywhere you look, something is happening. Merchants are shouting prices with the confidence of people convinced that volume alone creates value. Wheels scrape against stone roads. Footsteps overlap in every direction. Someone nearby is arguing passionately about something that apparently matters very deeply to them and absolutely nobody else. The city does not move around you, it moves through you. That's the first thing you notice. There is no personal bubble here, no comfortable distance, no peaceful stroll through quiet streets. Rome believes in proximity. People brush past you constantly. A shoulder here, an elbow there, a cartwheel coming slightly too close to your foot. You stop trying to avoid everyone because after 5 minutes you realize that avoiding everyone in Rome would require supernatural abilities. Then you smell something. At first it's difficult to identify because Rome itself is already an entire collection of smells competing for attention. Fresh bread, somewhere nearby. Smoke from cooking fires. Animals, sweat, wet stone, dust. But underneath all of that is something stronger pulling your attention away from everything else. Wine, food, roasted meat, herbs, and the strange permanent scent of a place that has seen thousands of people come and go over countless years. You follow it almost automatically because human curiosity has always had a weakness for food and bad decisions. Then you see it, the tavern. It doesn't announce itself dramatically. There's no giant sign hanging outside, no decorative entrance trying to impress strangers. Rome doesn't waste time convincing you to enter. It simply assumes you will. The front is open directly toward the street, as if the building itself has decided walls are optional. A heavy stone counter stretches across the entrance with large clay containers resting inside it. People crowd around it tightly, packed shoulder to shoulder with the kind of closeness that would make future generations deeply uncomfortable. Some are laughing loudly. Some are speaking with exaggerated hand movements. Others look completely absorbed in conversations that seem extremely important despite involving topics you suspect nobody will remember tomorrow morning. You pause for a second. You could continue walking. Nobody is forcing you to enter. You could keep your dignity, keep your personal space, and continue down the street pretending you never noticed this place at all. That would probably be the responsible choice. Instead, you move closer, which immediately feels like a mistake. The noise hits first, not gradually, not politely, instantly. Conversations crash into each other from every direction. Laughter erupts unexpectedly somewhere to your left. Somebody calls out for more wine. Somebody else loudly explains why they are absolutely correct about something, while another person loudly explains why they are absolutely wrong. And somehow every voice exists at the same time without any of them winning. Then you realize something important. There is no room. None. You're no longer approaching the crowd. You're becoming part of it. Someone shifts slightly, and suddenly you're inside without actually remembering taking another step. You don't enter the tavern. The tavern absorbs you. A man carrying a cup brushes past your shoulder without even noticing. Someone behind you moves forward, and now you move forward too, whether you wanted to or not. You adjust your footing carefully because this no longer feels entirely like a social experience. It feels slightly like surviving a very slow-moving wave. Yet despite the chaos, something feels strangely alive about it. Everything here has energy. Nothing is pretending to be cleaner or quieter or more organized than it really is. The tavern isn't trying to impress you. It doesn't care whether you approve of it. It existed before you arrived, and it will continue existing long after you leave. And as you stand there surrounded by noise and movement and people who all seem perfectly comfortable in this environment, one realization slowly settles into your mind. You have not simply entered a tavern tonight. You have stepped directly into the beating heart of Rome itself. You remain standing there for a moment, trying to convince yourself that everything is under control, which is difficult because absolutely nothing around you appears to be under control. The crowd shifts constantly, like some enormous living creature that occasionally decides where your feet should be. One second you have space to breathe, and the next second somebody has somehow appeared close enough that you can identify exactly what they ate earlier today. Personal space here is not a concept. It is a forgotten dream. You slowly realize that fighting against the movement is useless. Rome has made a decision for you already. Adapt or continue suffering. So you stop resisting. You let yourself move with the crowd instead of against it, and immediately things become slightly easier. Not comfortable, definitely not comfortable, but manageable, which in Rome feels surprisingly close to success. Somewhere ahead, you can finally see the stone counter more clearly. Large clay containers are built directly into it, their surfaces darkened by years of use. Steam rises from some of them in slow twisting waves. Others sit quietly, hiding whatever mysteries exist inside. People reach toward them casually, speaking with workers behind the counter who move with impressive speed. There are no menus, no written lists, no polite explanations of today's specials. Apparently, Rome believes discovery builds character. You watch carefully because observation suddenly feels important. There seems to be an unwritten system operating here, except it barely resembles a system at all. Nobody forms lines. Nobody waits patiently for their turn. Instead, people simply exist near the counter with enough confidence until they become impossible to ignore. That's the strategy. Presence. You watch a man squeeze forward with absolute certainty, say 3 words, receive a cup of wine almost immediately, and disappear back into the crowd without slowing down once. It looks effortless. You admire it instantly. You also realize you possess absolutely none of that confidence yourself. You hesitate for too long and immediately regret it because hesitation here feels visible. Rome notices uncertainty. Rome enjoys uncertainty. Suddenly, someone behind you bumps gently into your shoulder, pushing you slightly forward. Then another shift comes from your side. Before you understand what's happening, you're standing directly against the counter itself. You blink. Apparently, the crowd has made your decision for you again. A man behind the counter glances toward you briefly. Not warmly, not impatiently, simply acknowledging your existence for a fraction of a second. It becomes painfully obvious that if you don't speak now, this moment disappears forever. So you do the only thing that feels safe: wine. You ask for wine because wine feels familiar. Wine feels predictable. Wine feels like something capable of protecting you from further embarrassment. The man nods once. That's it. No questions. No conversation. No attempt to sell you something more expensive. A few seconds later, a cup appears in your hand. The entire exchange happens with such speed that you almost wonder if you accidentally skipped part of it. You look down at the drink carefully. It certainly resembles wine. That's encouraging. You bring it closer cautiously and notice the smell first. It smells different, stronger somehow, sharper, less refined than what your mind expected. You tell yourself not to judge too quickly because every unfamiliar thing deserves a fair chance. Then you take a sip. Immediately your face nearly betrays you, not dramatically, not enough for others to notice. But internally, several parts of your brain become deeply concerned. This is not the wine you imagined. Modern ideas about wine disappear instantly. This is ancient Roman wine. Different rules apply here. It has been diluted with water because drinking it straight is considered excessive. It may contain herbs. It may contain spices. It may contain ingredients added by somebody who woke up one morning and felt unusually creative. There is warmth where you expected coolness, sharpness where you expected softness. There is also a strange taste that you cannot identify at all. You're not even completely certain you want to identify it. You stare into the cup suspiciously for a moment. Then you look around. Nobody else appears concerned. People drink confidently, casually, happily even. Cups rise and lower constantly around you. Nobody seems confused. Nobody appears betrayed by their own beverage, which means one of two possibilities must be true. Either this wine is genuinely enjoyable, or everyone here collectively decided years ago to stop asking difficult questions. You take another sip, longer this time, then another. Slowly, something changes. Not the taste exactly, the taste remains itself, but your expectations begin shifting around it. The unfamiliar becomes less surprising. The sharpness feels less aggressive. You stop comparing it to things you already know and begin accepting it as its own experience. And strangely enough, it starts working. Not because it suddenly becomes extraordinary, but because it starts making sense. You understand something now. The wine was never trying to impress you. That was never its purpose. Around you, conversations continue rising and falling like waves. Laughter erupts somewhere nearby. Somebody slaps another person on the shoulder hard enough to sound like a small accident. Someone else is telling a story with dramatic hand gestures that appear large enough to require their own space permit. You watch all of it while holding your cup and notice a strange feeling slowly developing. You feel slightly less separate now, slightly less like an outsider observing Rome through glass, because holding the cup changes things somehow. It's a small object, but suddenly you belong to the scene around you. You are participating now rather than simply watching. You're standing among workers finishing long days, among travelers resting tired feet, among people escaping homes, responsibilities, boredom, or simply looking for company before night arrives. Nobody asked who you are. Nobody demanded explanation. You simply arrived, accepted the cup, and became another face within the crowd. And standing there with voices surrounding you from every direction, with warm wine in your hand and movement constantly pressing around you, another realization slowly settles into your thoughts. Rome never waited for you to understand it. Rome simply pulled you inside and assumed eventually you would catch up. By now, the wine has started doing something interesting. Not magical, not dramatic. You're not suddenly transformed into a fearless Roman citizen with perfect social instincts and an understanding of local politics. Nothing that impressive. But it has adjusted something small inside your mind. The edges of the experience feel softer now. The noise that seemed overwhelming earlier now blends together into something almost rhythmic. The crowd that initially felt like a problem now feels more like weather, still chaotic, still unpredictable but no longer personal. You stop reacting every time somebody brushes past you. You stop noticing every accidental elbow. You stop calculating escape routes toward the entrance every few seconds. Without realizing it, you've begun adapting. An adaptation in Rome happens fast because Rome does not give you alternatives. Your eyes move toward the stone counter again, this time with more curiosity than caution. Earlier, you focused only on surviving the environment. Now you begin noticing details. Large clay jars sit embedded in the counter, each containing food that has clearly spent a significant amount of time becoming whatever it currently is. Steam rises slowly from some of them. Others reveal thick mixtures of vegetables, beans, sauces, meat, and things that once possessed shapes but have since entered a more mysterious stage of existence. The smells drift through the tavern constantly, changing every few seconds depending on who moves and which direction the air decides to travel. Warm bread somewhere nearby, herbs, oil, roasted meat, something sweet for a moment, then something stronger replaces it before you can identify what it was. You lean slightly closer, not enough to look overly interested, just enough to gather information, because information feels valuable right now. You notice people ordering food with complete confidence. No hesitation, no careful examination. They point, speak briefly, receive bowls, and continue with their conversations as if food selection required absolutely no thought whatsoever. You admire this confidence deeply because you currently possess none of it. The problem isn't hunger. You're definitely hungry. The problem is uncertainty. Ancient Roman food suddenly feels like a collection of unanswered questions. Yet standing there while everybody around you eats creates a kind of pressure. Not direct pressure. Nobody is staring at you waiting for a decision. But there's a subtle feeling that if everyone else accepts this situation without concern, perhaps you should too. Human beings have always had a remarkable talent for trusting crowds right before making questionable decisions. Eventually, curiosity wins. Curiosity usually wins. You gesture toward one of the jars with confidence you absolutely do not feel. A worker glances at you briefly and serves a portion into a small bowl without explanation. Again, Rome demonstrates its commitment to efficiency over emotional support. Seconds later, the bowl is in your hands. You stare at it carefully. It doesn't look terrible, which somehow feels like victory already. You identify vegetables. That's encouraging. Some pieces of meat, maybe. Thick sauce surrounding everything. Bread on the side. Familiar enough to reduce panic slightly. You take a cautious first bite. Then pause. Not because it's horrible. Actually, that's the surprising part. It's not horrible at all. It simply exists in a strange place between recognizable and unfamiliar. The flavors feel heavier than expected. Stronger. Simpler in some ways, but more direct in others. Nothing is subtle. Nothing whispers politely to your taste buds. Roman food apparently believes in making immediate introductions. You chew thoughtfully and take another bite, then another. Slowly, the pattern begins revealing itself. This food isn't trying to create an experience. It isn't trying to surprise you or impress you or become something you'll remember forever. It's practical, warm, filling, designed to satisfy hunger quickly for people who spend entire days working, walking, carrying, building, surviving. Suddenly, it makes perfect sense. Around you, nobody is studying their meals carefully or discussing flavor complexity. People eat while talking, while laughing, while arguing, while gesturing dramatically with hands still holding bread. Food here exists as part of life rather than an event itself. You continue eating while your attention drifts toward the people around you. Earlier, everything felt too overwhelming to observe properly. Now individual details begin standing out. To your left sits a group of workers, still wearing dust and dirt from the day. Their hands move constantly while they talk. They laugh loudly and interrupt each other without hesitation. One man appears to be telling a story that becomes more impressive every 30 seconds. His friends respond with expressions suggesting they absolutely do not believe him and absolutely want him to continue anyway. Nearby, a soldier drinks quietly with two companions. He looks relaxed, but not entirely relaxed. His eyes continue moving around the room automatically, as if years of training refuse to disappear even during rest. Further away sits an older man speaking slowly, while younger listeners lean closer. Every few moments, someone nods thoughtfully. Someone else disagrees. Nobody appears offended. Conversations rise and fall naturally, like waves meeting each other. And suddenly, you realize something important. This tavern isn't filled with strangers sharing space accidentally. It's filled with different worlds briefly crossing paths. Laborers, travelers, merchants, soldiers, citizens, people with entirely different lives somehow gathering inside one loud, crowded room because for a few hours, tonight, everyone needs exactly the same thing. Warm food, something to drink, human voices around them. The realization settles quietly into your mind while you take another sip of wine. Earlier, you thought this place felt chaotic because you were looking for structure. But now you understand there is structure here, just not the kind you expected. It exists beneath the noise, beneath the movement, beneath all the apparent disorder. There are patterns here, invisible rhythms connecting everything together. Who speaks loudly? Who listens? Who jokes? Who observes quietly from corners? The tavern feels less like a room and more like a living thing, made from hundreds of tiny interactions happening simultaneously. Then something catches your attention across the room, a burst of laughter louder than everything around it. Several people turn briefly toward a corner table. You follow their attention and notice a small crowd gathering around something you can't quite see yet. People lean forward with unusual focus. Heads tilt. Voices lower slightly. Coins move across a table surface. You narrow your eyes trying to understand what's happening. Whatever it is, it has everyone's attention. And in Rome, attention usually means one of two things: entertainment or trouble. Sometimes both. You take another sip of wine slowly while watching from a distance. Because by now, you've learned something useful. In Rome, curiosity is valuable, but too much curiosity occasionally becomes a problem. Your curiosity wins again, which by this point is becoming a pattern you should probably be concerned about. You lean slightly to the side, carefully shifting between people while trying not to accidentally become part of someone else's conversation. The crowd near the table has grown larger now. Not enormous, but large enough that something important is clearly happening. Heads tilt forward, arms cross. Eyes stay fixed on the center of the table with an intensity usually reserved for military strategy or life-changing decisions. You finally manage to see between shoulders and moving arms. Dice. Small worn dice rolling across a wooden surface polished by years of use. Coins sit in little stacks nearby, moving from one side of the table to another every few moments. Suddenly the reactions make sense. This isn't just a game. This is gambling Roman style. One man shakes the dice in his hand dramatically, as if confidence somehow he